January 26, 1945. The Colmar Pocket, France. Temperature 14 degrees Fahrenheit. The ground was not just cold, it was frozen solid. You couldn't dig a foxhole, you couldn't hide. You were exposed. In the middle of a snowy clearing near the tiny village of Holtzwihr, a catastrophe was unfolding. A US M10 tank destroyer was burning. It had been struck by a German 88mm shell. Black smoke billowed into the grey sky. The tank was a ticking time bomb. The fuel tanks were ruptured and leaking. The ammunition stored inside was beginning to cook off. It was a metal coffin waiting to explode. Any rational soldier, any sane human being, would have run in the opposite direction. Survival instinct screams at you to get away. But on top of that burning hull stood a boy. He was 19 years old. He stood 5 feet 5 inches tall. He weighed barely 110 pounds. In his oversized uniform, he looked more like a child playing soldier than an officer of the United States Army. But in his hands was the trigger of a .50 caliber machine gun. Facing him was a German force estimated at 2 full companies. Roughly 250 elite German troops, supported by 6 Tiger tanks. They were advancing across the snow in white camouflage. They expected the Americans to surrender. They expected a quick victory. They did not expect a single, angry kid to hold the line against an entire army. For nearly 1 hour, the boy on the burning tank waged a one-man war. He turned the snowy field into a killing zone. The Germans shot at him. They threw grenades. They tried to flank him. But they couldn't kill him. His name was Audie Murphy. And this is the true story of the most decorated soldier in American history. It is the story of how a Texas farm boy, rejected by the Marines for being too frail, became the savior of his division. It is the story of the rage that fueled his impossible stand and the terrible price he paid for his courage, long after the guns went silent. Audie Murphy was not born a warrior. He was born a survivor. He grew up in Kingston, Texas, during the darkest days of the Great Depression. His family was dirt poor, sharecroppers. They lived in a shack with paper patches on the walls to keep out the wind. His father abandoned the family when Audie was young. His mother died when he was just 16. Suddenly, Audie was the head of the family. He had younger brothers and sisters who looked to him for food. He hunted to survive. He took an old .22 rifle and hunted rabbits and squirrels. But he had a rule. Bullets cost money. If he fired a shot, he had to bring back food. If he missed, they didn't eat. That is where he learned to shoot. He didn't learn on a shooting range. He learned in the struggle against starvation. He learned that accuracy wasn't a skill, it was a necessity. When Pearl Harbor happened in 1941, Audie tried to enlist immediately. He went to the Marine Corps. They looked at his size, 110 pounds, baby face, and they laughed. "Go home, son, you're too small. The pack weighs more than you do." He went to the paratroopers. "No, the wind will blow you away before you hit the ground." He went to the Navy. "No." Finally, the Army accepted him. But even there, it was a struggle. During basic training, he fainted during drills. His officers tried to transfer him to the kitchen as a cook. They wanted to protect him. But Audie refused. "I am not a cook. I am a soldier. I want to fight." He was assigned to the 3rd Infantry Division, the Rock of the Marne. By 1945, the weak kid had proven everyone wrong. He had fought through the mountains of Sicily. He had survived the mud of Italy. He had landed in southern France. He had become one of the most effective combat leaders in the European theatre. But he wasn't fighting for glory. He was fighting for his friends. And days before the battle at Holtzwihr, he lost his best friend. To understand why Audie climbed that tank, We have to look at what happened 3 days earlier. January 23rd, Audie's unit was ambushed. His close friend, Lattie Tipton, was with him. A German soldier waved a white flag. Tipton stood up to accept the surrender. It was a trick. The German shot Tipton dead. Audie watched his friend die. Something inside him snapped. He went into a rage. He grabbed a German machine gun and charged the enemy line alone, killing the men who tricked his friend. From that moment on, Audie Murphy wasn't just fighting to win. He was fighting with a cold, hard anger. He felt responsible for his men. He was now a lieutenant, not because he went to school, but because all the other officers were dead. By January 26th, his unit, Company B, was decimated. Out of 235 men, only 19 were left standing. 19 tired, freezing men. And they were the only things standing between the German army and the collapse of the American line. January 26th, 2 p.m., the Colmar Pocket. The Germans launched a massive counterattack. 6 panzer tanks emerged from the woods. Behind them came waves of German infantry in white snow smocks. They were invisible until they were right on top of the Americans. The Americans had no cover. The ground was frozen rock hard. Digging foxholes was impossible. Their only heavy support, 2 M10 tank destroyers, was hit immediately. The first M10 slid into a ditch and got stuck. The second one took a direct hit from an 88mm shell. It caught fire. The crew bailed out and ran for the woods. The American line was breaking. It was about to be a massacre. Murphy looked at his 19 men. He knew that if they tried to stand and fight against tanks, they would be wiped out in minutes. He made a decision. He shouted the order. "Get back! Retreat to the woods! I will cover you!" His men hesitated. They didn't want to leave their lieutenant. Murphy screamed, "That is an order! Get back!" The men fell back to the tree line. Murphy stayed behind, alone. He had a field telephone in one hand and his carbine in the other. He was the last line of defense. The German infantry was closing in. They were 200 yards away. Murphy emptied his carbine. It wasn't enough against 200 men. He looked to his right. The burning M10 tank destroyer. The crew was gone, but the .50 caliber machine gun on the turret was still operational. It was a suicidal move. The tank was engulfed in flames. Smoke was pouring from the hatches. It was a beacon for enemy fire. And worse, it was full of high explosive shells and gasoline. It could blow up at any second. Murphy didn't hesitate. He scrambled up the burning hull. The metal was searing hot. The smoke choked his lungs. He dragged the heavy machine gun into position. He checked the belt. It was loaded. He looked out at the field of grey figures advancing through the snow. The Germans thought the tank was dead. They thought the battle was won. They were wrong. Murphy pulled the trigger. The .50 caliber round is devastating. It can punch through trees. It can tear through light armor. The first burst cut through the front rank of the German infantry. The enemy was shocked. They couldn't understand where the fire was coming from. They looked at the burning tank. It can't be from there, they thought. Nobody would be crazy enough to stand on a burning tank. But Murphy was there, and he wasn't stopping. For the next hour, Murphy waged a one-man war. He was multitasking under fire. With one hand, he fired the machine gun, swinging the turret left and right. With the other, he held the field telephone. He was calling in artillery strikes from the rear. "Drop it 50 yards forward!" he yelled into the phone. "Closer! Closer!" The artillery officer on the line asked, "How close are they to your position?" Murphy replied with dark humour, "Hold the phone a minute. I'll let you talk to them." The German tanks fired at him. The concussion rocked the burning M10. Shrapnel bounced off the hull. But the smoke from the fire actually helped him. It acted as a screen. The Germans couldn't see him clearly. They just saw the muzzle flashes coming from the flame. At one point, a squad of Germans crawled through a ditch. They got within 10 yards, 30 feet, of the tank. They were about to throw grenades. Murphy saw them. He depressed the gun barrel. He killed them all at point-blank range. He was shot in the leg. Blood filled his boot. He ignored it. The heat from the fire was scorching his eyebrows. His uniform was smoking. He didn't stop. He later said, "I didn't think about dying. I just wanted to kill as many of them as I could." He was one boy against an army. Stories like this remind us what true courage looks like. If you want to keep the legacy of heroes like Audie Murphy alive, hit that subscribe button. We tell the stories Hollywood can't even imagine. Now, let's see how he escaped. The gun clicked dry. Murphy checked his ammo belt. Empty. He looked down. The fire had reached the hatch. The tank was groaning. The heat was unbearable. He knew he had seconds left. He dropped the phone. He jumped from the turret and limped toward the woods. He dragged his wounded leg through the deep snow. He didn't look back. He reached the tree line where his men were waiting. And then the M10 finally blew. The ammunition cooked off. The turret was tossed 50 feet into the air. If he had stayed 10 seconds longer, he would have been vaporized. Murphy found his men. They were staring at him in disbelief. He was covered in soot, bleeding, shaking. But he wasn't done. He refused medical treatment. He grabbed a rifle. "Counterattack," he ordered. The 19 men, inspired by their leader, charged back into the field. The Germans were confused. They thought they were facing a huge force. Broken by the one-man army, they retreated. The Americans retook the field. They counted the bodies. Murphy had killed or wounded 50 men, single-handedly. When the report of the battle reached headquarters, the generals couldn't believe it. 1 man? 1 hour? On a burning tank? It sounded like a lie. But the 19 soldiers testified, the artillery officers testified, the smoking wreck of the tank testified. On June 2nd, 1945, Audie Murphy was awarded the Medal of Honor. He was 19 years old. He had become the most decorated soldier in American history. He had every medal the Army could give, some of them twice. He returned to Texas as a legend. Life magazine put him on the cover. James Cagney invited him to Hollywood. He became a movie star. He played himself in the movie To Hell and Back. But the war never really left him. This is the part of the story that most people forget. The hero pays a price. Audie Murphy suffered from severe PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. In the 1940s, they called it battle fatigue. Veterans didn't talk about it, they hid it. They were told to be a man. But Audie couldn't hide it. He had nightmares. He slept with a loaded pistol under his pillow. He would wake up screaming, firing shots at the wall, convinced the Germans were attacking. He locked himself in a hotel room for a week to break his addiction to sleeping pills. He was volatile. He was angry. He gambled away his fortune. But instead of suffering in silence, he spoke up. He broke the taboo. He told the American public, "War is not glorious. It is hell. And it doesn't end when you come home." He fought for better medical treatment for veterans. He used his fame to shine a light on the mental scars of combat. He showed that a man could be the toughest soldier in the world and still be broken inside. Audie Murphy died in a plane crash in 1971. He was 45 years old. He was buried in Arlington National Cemetery. His grave is the second most visited after President Kennedy. The tombstone is simple. It lists his name, his rank. It doesn't list his medals. There isn't enough space on the stone to fit them all. The story of the burning tank sounds like a myth, but it happened. It proves that sometimes size doesn't matter. Technology doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the will to fight. 200 German soldiers looked at a burning tank and saw an easy target.
They didn't know they were looking at the toughest kid in Texas.
Audie Murphy said, "I will never forgive the enemy." Do you think his anger fueled his bravery? Or was he just protecting his friends? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you want to see the story of the German general who was executed by the Americans, click this video right here. Thanks for watching.